Well, so far the process has been very expensive because it's taken about 10 years to get through various different courts to this point. But the Guardian has now won the case at the Supreme Court, and I think that the last public figures on this were that there was around £270,000 worth of costs that the government had racked up. So it's been a very expensive, and there'll be further costs on top of that, I think. And so it's been a very expensive process.
Presumably you have to pay your side of the cost as well, so we can double that.
Well, I think that still is to be settled, actually. No doubt the lawyers there are still working around that.
Now, has it been worth it in the end, all that effort and all that money for what we've discovered in these letters?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that make it worth it. One is the depth of understanding that you can get from the letters here about the way that Prince Charles has operated in the past and possibly still operates with government ministers in terms of pushing his own agendas and trying to get involved in policy debates. The complexity with which he does that, the detail with which he does that, and also the sort of demanding nature of some of his letters about wanting to see things done and also wanting to get his own aides and advisors involved in the policy debate.
I mean, he clearly has privileged access. He is the heir to the throne. At the same time, the opinions he expresses are pretty run-of-the-mill, aren't they? And is there much evidence that they had any impact on government?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, to the extent that a lot of the things he raises are things that we know he was already interested in, whether it's architecture or complementary medicine, or Patagonian toothfish, all the way up to defence and his demands around replacement for the Lynx helicopter. But I think what you can see in some of the letters as we're going through them now is that ministers, including Tony Blair, are responding very positively to his suggestions, and they are saying that we will take on board advice that you are willing to give us, and that was notable in the correspondence about complementary medicine. So I think there is clearly a message coming out of these letters that government ministers, certainly at that point, took him seriously. Often they're trying to mollify him to some extent, I think, and say, look, I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, but this is what the policy is and this is where we're going. But there's very open communication, and in some cases there seems to be a kind of willingness to adapt to his views.
Do you at The Guardian think there's actually something inappropriate about what's been revealed about the Prince's behaviour and his influence?
Well, I think the view is that, people take different views at The Guardian on that. I think one of the most important things is that there's transparency around the way that he communicates with the government, and that this is an important part of achieving that sort of transparency. And I think it becomes more and more important, actually, as he gets closer and closer to being king, and especially if he intends, as some people seem to think he does, to become more of an activist king than his mother had been.
Because, of course, one of the ironies is, as a result of this legal action, the government's now changed the law, and the monarch and the heir to the throne have absolute privilege, and any future communications will be kept private.
Well, that change was made some years ago, I think, and they did indeed introduce an absolute exemption, and that makes it very difficult, as you say, for us to find out more about that. And I don't think that's something that's to be welcomed. I think perhaps all journalists would say this, but I think the public would feel it too, that if he is going to take a part in public life, we need to find perhaps some way of understanding more about that in a way that is acceptable to the public as well as the government and the royal family.